Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to dispense with a further reading of Senate Bill 1177.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the gentleman has the floor to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 1177 is a very simple bill. It gets rid of part of government. It just repeals Chapter 51 of Title 54, Idaho Code. A little bit of a history. Mr. Speaker, Chapter 51 was put into statute in 2005. Immediately from the beginning, there were problems. I could go through a lengthy history of what has happened with Chapter 51 since that time, but I won't. I will just mention a couple of things. The dysfunction was significant enough that in 2008, the legislature changed the makeup of the board, and Section 2 of that bill forbid any issuing of licenses by the Naturopathic Board until rules were approved by the legislature. Rules were never approved by the legislature. Shortly thereafter, the board kind of spontaneously disintegrated and disappeared. There were some lawsuits involved in that, et cetera. And I think we're all becoming familiar with what has happened since that period of time. Mr. Speaker, with respect to why the legislature in the state of Idaho licenses professions, the number one issue always is public safety. Is there a public safety issue to regulate a profession or a vocation or an occupation? Number two is the expectation of standards and competence. Number three is the issue of liability protection, liability insurance for the profession. Essentially have to be licensed to have that. And if there's third-party payments for insurance, and there are in a multitude of things such as auto insurance and health insurance, et cetera, you have to have a licensure scheme for insurance companies essentially to pay because they want to know that there are levels of competence, et cetera. And so that's why the state actually licenses professions. So in closing, I would like to say the following. Ladies and gentlemen, or Mr. Speaker, I apologize. Mr. Speaker, in the last 9 years that I have been associated with trying to find a solution to the issue of naturopathic medicine in the state of Idaho, I have not had a single citizen in the state of Idaho come forward and complain that there was a public safety issue or that there was a public health issue. As a matter of fact, the citizens are very fine and happy with the current state of affairs with naturopathic medicine because I've gotten no complaints and I've not heard anybody else that have had any complaints. Now, realizing that all of this time, no one has operated with a license. They are unlicensed at this point in time, and everybody seems to be happy. We heard testimony from individuals in committee, and one gentleman who testified stated that he was a naturopathic physician and practiced naturopathic medicine. And when asked whether or not he had a license, he said, "No, I don't have a license." And so the following was read from him, which is Title 54, Section 5103. It says, "No person shall hold himself or herself out to others as a naturopathic physician or practice naturopathic medicine as defined herein without first applying for and receiving a license." And then if you turn to 54-5117, enforcement penalties, it says, "Every person who knowingly holds himself or herself out as a naturopathic physician or who practices naturopathic medicine as defined herein in this state without a license is guilty of a misdemeanor." Now, it was pointed out to the gentleman that what he's doing is his patients are very happy, he's happy, everything is fine, but yet state statute makes him a criminal every day. Mr. Speaker, there's something wrong here with that. The state of Idaho and the legislature should not be forcing our citizens and the citizens who are happy with their services into making them criminals. That's just bad public policy. Mr. Speaker, there were several people who testified in support of this. The Idaho Medical Association testified in support of this. The Idaho Freedom Foundation testified in support of this. I support this, and I would submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that any time that the Idaho Medical Association, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and the good representative from District 27 all agree, it's time to go home and declare this session a success. I ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Did everybody feel the earth move there? Is there further debate on Senate Bill 1177?
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 32.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be voting no. This is probably a good action to take, however. I don't think anybody in this body has as much time invested in this particular item as do I. I have struggled with this over a very long time, trying to reach some means of moving forward. At the time of the inception of this, I asked the naturopaths point blank, why on earth do you want to be licensed? I never really ever got a decent answer to that, except they wanted to be licensed. Mr. Speaker, I think that everyone who's touched this is to blame. I think we in government have let these folks down. We did not in government, and I mean all of us in government, not just in this body, certainly by any means, but we're unwilling to develop the rules to keep the board intact. My first efforts with this issue, with the squabbling that was going on between the various groups, I personally locked them in a room and said, we're not leaving here until we get some resolution. And that's how the legislation came about in the first place for licensing of naturopaths. My vote here won't make any difference, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps it's a good idea so we don't have lawbreakers, but certainly if licensure ever was a good idea, then I think all of us in government who have touched this have really messed up in one way or another, so I will be voting no.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 16.
Mr. Speaker, would the good gentleman from 27 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield? Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And good gentleman, I asked this as a freshman. Is the Idaho Freedom Foundation an expert in naturopathic medicine?
Gentleman from 27.
Mr. Speaker, I'm probably not qualified to answer that. I would refer you to the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there further debate? Lady from 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 27 yield to a
Will
question?
the floor sponsor yield to another question?
Gentleman yields, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, good gentleman. I know there's a lot of history to this, and some of it's been touched on in the past, and I'm just trying to understand better. It seems that a lot of the trouble stems from the fact that we've required licensure and yet provided no body that can actually back that up and give out licenses. And I'm just wondering how that came to be. Why is it that licensing board was never staffed and that we were never able to actually give out the licenses that this section calls for?
Gentleman from 27 for a quick history lesson.
I am not the person to give you the best history of this. The good representative from District 32 actually is. I think he and I would both like to go to lunch before 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. And it would take probably that long to go through the history. but the fact, I think it's just safe to say that there's enough disparate pieces to this puzzle that I don't know that a solution can ever be found. I have tried and I have failed. So this is, in my opinion, this is the best answer to make sure that our citizens who are happy now and our practitioners aren't breaking the law. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Will the gentleman from 27 please stand and close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think that most everything has been said. I think it's just been very difficult to try to get people together. The field is quite large with the scope of practice, et cetera, with many divergent views on what that should be. And the education of the individuals are significantly different. And I think that given that, there is no compromise that's available at this point in time. And so I think we need to take a statute that is not being enforced and may well be unenforceable and take it off of the books and let our citizens and the people who take care of them rest in peace.
Thank you, good gentleman. The debate is closed. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1177 pass? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and read the pairs, please.
Mr. Speaker, we have a pair at the desk. Rushi votes aye and Moyle votes nay.
The roll call shows 56 aye, 13 nay with 1 absent. Senate Bill 1177 has passed the House and will be returned to the Senate.